And today, Tracy Ledford.
Because we moved a lot, being a military family, libraries were safe spaces. And
That
so,
how would you
um,
accomplish that one?
the porn is coming on Friday. And he'd read a whole article like that.
For anyone thinking about writing a book, what's one thing that you see authors or aspiring authors struggle with the most?
It really comes down to confidence and discipline. My story is good enough to be told. 80% of people say they want to write a book. Less than 3% actually write it, and less than 1% publish it.
Do you have favorite questions, maybe like two, three, that you love asking these aspiring authors to get a story out of them?
Why is this your story? Who are you telling it to? Who's
I'm excited for today's conversation. And as I hear myself saying it, I probably feel like in every new episode that I'm going to do, I'm going to end up saying it just because I know there's a new story, a new adventure, a new journey I'm about to dive into. And today, this journey is going to be with no one other than Tracy Ledford. Now, Tracy and I, we met on the Threads platform, and coincidentally, we also have a common friend, Daniel Wolfsong, who was a guest on the my first guest. And yeah, I'm just excited to have Tracy here. So, Tracy, this is going to be a conversation between me and you. And I just want to know before we get things started off, how are you feeling?
I feel great. I feel great. I've been looking forward to this and spending this time with you and just seeing where the conversation goes.
Likewise,
You're
likewise.
one of my favorite people on any social media platform. You're so much fun.
Tracy, that means you're going to make me blush so early on. Oh my gosh. No, but
Well,
that means a lot.
true story. I am so impressed with the content you're putting out and the way that you're approaching your story and building your world. It is fun. This was an easy yes for me.
Ah, nice. That means a lot. All right. So, because we met on Threads, I did something similar with Daniel. I want
Okay.
to open the conversation not with the casual "tell me about yourself," but because we met on Threads, I want to go back to your very first Threads post, and that was back in November last year,
Okay.
about 6 months ago. And I'm gonna read it, and then the thread said, "My feed is absolutely flooded with women following women, and I am
Yeah.
100% here for it. I'm Tracy, a former teacher and librarian who's transitioned out of the classroom. Now I spend most of my days as a book coach, editor, and EdTech writer with dogs at my feet. I'm excited to connect with other creatives and women who know there's plenty of room at the table for everyone." So, Tracy, take me back to that first thread. What was going on in your mind? Where were you on your journey?
Right. So I was not a big Twitter user. I used it for keeping up with some education stuff, um, some ed tech chats. That's about it. But like everybody else, my Instagram feed was flooded in November with this women following women. And so, flipped over, read some, and I was so encouraged by the way women were talking to each other.
Mm,
Um, Women do not have a history, really, of taking care of each other. They tend to be more competitive than collaborative, especially professionally. And then there was this shift. Um, like the whole group collectively decided we can do better, we can be better. Um, so that's kind of where that started from.
okay, okay. And I mean, I love the fact that you said like you saw this shift. And just, I mean, as a woman yourself, you know, in your career, was this something that you, this competitiveness, was this something that you experienced personally? Is
Yes. So I moved into my business now out of education, public school. teaching. I was a preschool teacher, kindergarten teacher, and became the elementary librarian before transitioning out of the classroom. And teachers are amazing, amazing, and ultra competitive,
Mm.
ultra competitive. Um, my class can stand in the hallway better than your class. Competitive. Um, so some of the I have some great colleagues, and then I had some that were bent on playing the game. They wanted it to be a game,
Okay.
and that's uncomfortable for everybody, right? Um, and we do it in the U.S. We do it kind of by test scores too. My class scored better. They behaved better in the cafeteria. They all those things. Everything's a competition.
Okay. Okay. Now that's interesting. Because as I read, like as I read your first post, I felt like there was a lot, or there is a lot to unpack there. Book coach, editor, and so we got this high level, or at least I got this high level perspective of Tracy. And after you left the classroom, the first book you edited was called All About Smart Manufacturing, and this was by a guy called an
Mike
author,
Nager.
Mike Nager. And it's a
Mhm.
book for elementary kids. And here's a side note: I actually looked this book up, and I found it on Amazon, and the book had a 4.8 out of 5 rating. And this was based on 60 plus reviews. So this is pretty stunning. And so I just wanted to know, like, how was that experience for you? What was your role? How do you feel knowing that book was so well received?
I will be forever grateful to Mike for that opportunity. That was my first editing job, and I had, you know, of course, teaching. I wrote my own curriculum. I wrote stories for my classroom. I did a lot of ghostwriting work for my school district, but this was that first. It's my name on it. Um, Book editor. They're going to put it out into the world, and Mike really took a chance on me. Um, I didn't have a portfolio to show. I said, I can do the work. I'm an educator. Let's talk about it. And it's a rhyming text, and rhyming text can be difficult to write, especially getting the meter and flow correct. But he brought the idea to me, and we talked through a few things. He does a stunning job of communicating some real high level manufacturing work to kids. I had so much fun doing that book. And Mike is a delight. Definitely look up his work on LinkedIn. He does a lot in the realm of education and manufacturing and what's possible there. And we talked a lot in our conversation about there a disconnect between business and education. There were things he was telling me that I didn't even know were possible. Um, we don't think about manufacturing as a job. We tell our kids, you know, doctor, lawyer, teacher. Um, and then Mike comes in with the story, you could work in manufacturing and work with robots, and it's high level. And a lot of the things you think you want to do um, as a kid are all possible in a factory. And there's a new way to do it.
Yeah.
So um, it was an education for me too.
Okay. And I mean, it's interesting that you said you had no portfolio, because I would assume, if someone wants help with editing, their book, you would want to see some background, from that person. So how did that relationship or collaboration come about?
So a discovery call works wonders, right? Um, I do have experience. I don't have, or at that point, I didn't have experience in the format that most people did, especially not at my age. Um, so we talked. about his work, about his vision for the book. Um, Whenever I talked to him about um, reading levels or lexile levels, initially the vocabulary was very high level and it was all appropriate for manufacturing, but it would have been really hard for an 8-year old to understand. And just working through some of those phonetic things, what a kid can actually read, um, that rhythm and flow of a rhyme, how to match that up with the syllables in the line. We had a conversation, and the conversation ended up landing a job. Um,
That's awesome. Yeah, because again, I went through like the reviews on Amazon, and there were quite a number of people that said like this book really it's a really great book for kids just to have that understanding of there's more outside of just like you said, like being a doctor or like the typical jobs that may be um, promoted by kids. And and so you're talk me through a little bit of your role. Was your role more on like what was your role like specifically?
yeah, initially that conversation, that discovery call is a little bit of book coaching. So I say, here's a couple of things you might want to look at, and then um, give him the chance to do some of his own revisions the way that he sees it. He sends me the manuscript, and I do marginal notes and some inline text, some notes that you maybe change this verb, or this word's a really hard vocabulary word. You might want to try breaking it down or explaining it. If you leave that word in there, just explain it to them. Kids can handle big words. And then we passed the manuscript back and forth a few times until he said, "This is it. And it feels good. It
Uh,
feels it feels right." And you come to a place like that with work, right? You're like, "Is it perfect?" Yeah, I don't know. We can always tweak something, right? But he said it feels good, and it's ready to send out into the world, and it's done so well, so well.
I mean, that's amazing to hear, especially you saying, "Is it perfect?" Because if we're in the content space now, um, and I don't know about you, but very often, when I look at my work, would never say my work is perfect, but I've thought about this, and the conclusion I came to is it's like it's a double-sided thing where I won't find my content perfect, but my content is perfect for someone else. So in the eyes of someone else. And I think that's been one of the best ways, at least for me personally. I've gone into this whole content space, where I don't, where you take some of that pressure off of yourself. And someone once said, for video editors, like a video editor never finishes a project, they abandon a project, because just like you said, there's going to always be something that you can tweak, right?
Oh, well, I know as an editor, there was a point where if I didn't proofread it 4 times, I wasn't sending it into the world. And I think just a few days ago, I sent something out and I had misspelled the word teach. Teach. It's like, all those poor people out there that sat through my classroom, and I probably owe them apologies for lots of things, but we spell stuff wrong. It can be fixed. Did you understand what I was saying? Yes, you did.
Exactly.
So move on with it. Move on with it.
Exactly. So where did your love for books come from? Like, how old were you when you realized, damn, I love books?
I don't remember ever not loving books, and that's a testament to my parents. Um, I was not an easy kid to parent, um, but my parents were amazing, amazing. And my dad, whenever he came in, so my dad is an Air Force um, guy, and we lived in Colorado at the time. He would come in from work and he would read with me while my mom finished dinner, and that was part of our routine. My parents just built reading into all kinds of routines and rituals, not just bedtime, but him coming home from work. Seasonal things. There were special books for different seasons that they would pull out that were part of the decorations that my mom would put up, and we discovered those books all over again. Because we moved a lot, being a military family, libraries were safe spaces. Um, it was an easy place to go and meet somebody in the summertime because they usually had programs for kids. So we could meet some friends, and you can take books with you. We spent a lot of time on car trips. Um, so always, always.
Nice, nice. Um, when I look back at, us crossing paths on threads, which I'm, still happy to this day that we did cross paths. I think I found the one word that connected us. And I just want to know if you want to try and guess what that word is.
Storyteller.
Storytelling.
Yeah.
Wow. um, I posted a video, talking about, how I want to incorporate storytelling more in my content. And one of the first things you said was storytelling is high art and reading out loud is the best way to practice this skill. And then in our first conversation together, you shared a story about your dad. Now you just said, your parents, they try to incorporate reading into, you guys' routines and make, your own rituals. And I would love for you to share that story about your dad that you shared with me. Um, I think is like for breakfast.
Yeah. So when I say my parents, it's not something that I appreciated until I was much older. But my mother is the queen of routine, so much so that you don't even know that it's happening. But we ate breakfast together every morning, and we ate dinner together every night. And for one of those, sometimes for breakfast usually in the summer, dinner during school, during the school year. But my dad would have an article that he would read to us, something interesting. He read out loud to us. Oh gosh, we may have been into high school before, and schedules just got crazy before it stopped. But he would ask us um, about reading it in a different voice. So we would choose that he's reading in his giant voice or he's reading in his robot voice. And he would do it, and it could be a story about farming corn or detasseling season is coming, something nobody genuinely cares about, but it was great for us. We had a great time. And then he gave us the opportunity later, do you want to read it? Can you read it in this voice? We didn't know. And I don't even know that he knew at the time what he was teaching us about fluency and prosody and all of these things that we know about reading that work. He just he gave us that gift of this is how you tell a story. This is how you change your voice. Um, Anything can be hilarious if you say it like a telephone operator. Um, so that's like with your nose pinched, like the old timey telephone operators, um, or his underwater voice, which was great.
Ooh. What would
Yeah.
that
So
how would you accomplish that one?
the corn is coming on Friday. It's great, and he'd read a whole article like that.
What? That's
Right.
insane.
So well, and you know, then you're frozen. Listen, what is happening? He had us frozen, listening to every word he was saying. trying to figure it out because it's not easy to figure out. If you do it underwater, it's funny.
Yeah.
And it was smart. It was smart.
So should we continue the rest of this as a telephone operator?
You be the telephone operator. I'll do it underwater, and we'll see how that goes for your listeners.
Oh man, I absolutely love the, first of all, I love the fact that you it's so simple, but I love the fact that you gave me that tip because like I started this podcast and as a way for me to work on communicating my ideas, my concepts in a longer format, just being able to think clearly on the spot. And it's something that I'm still working on, still developing. But just something as easy as reading out loud is something I find myself doing now a lot more. Like when I'm on threads, I'm just like, if I read your post, I'm just reading it out loud. And I do realize it does help in terms of articulating and just also your word, just your recollection of words.
It's multisensory then, right? I'm hearing it and I'm saying it. I'm taking it in more than one way. It's really helpful. With children's literature, especially in poetry, those are written to be read out loud almost always. And there is something about a spoken word that is so beautiful. Um, Certainly an encouraging spoken word. So Threads is a great place for that. Um, Reading out loud and the ability to play with tone. Well, I heard it this way in my head. Is that the way that they meant it?
Hmm.
Um, it gives you a space to practice empathy,
Yeah.
right? And expand our vocabulary. I've learned some words from our Canadian friends um, that way, right? So language is fun, and spoken language is fun.
It is. And your passion, for books, storytelling, and teaching kids, it could not have come across any clearer in a photo I saw of you sitting outside on the sidewalk on this blue plaid blanket with a group of kids in front of you and you're reading a book. Like how did you how did you end up there?
So this was Christmas season, of course. That was our city's uh, Christmas festival, and a teacher friend called and said, "I want to do a story time for kids. Will you come?" It's like, yes, I have the perfect book, and Fabiola Albacaris had just released Magical Paws of Christmas,
Mm,
and this is a chance to help an author that I had worked with to get her book out there a little bit. Um, and I'm not in the classroom now, and I miss that. I went from reading to kids 3 and 4 times a day, um, more often as a librarian. Really, I missed reading to them. It's fun. That picture, um, I think they're all kids there, but there was one I wish I had put up where it was a grandmother, a mother, and her daughter sitting there, and the grandfather standing behind them. And there were a few teenagers on the blanket, and there was an infant. Somebody was holding an infant, but it was really like 5 generations of people sitting listening to this book about how dogs save Christmas. And we laughed, and I messed up. I missed words and had to turn it around. It didn't say that. Um, we just enjoyed the story together. It was fun.
yeah,
And Fabiola wrote such a great book.
that's amazing. That's amazing. And for anyone that may come across this conversation who may be thinking about writing a book, what's one thing that you see authors or aspiring authors struggle with the most?
I think people have ideas. I think if I'm remembering the statistics correctly, more than 80% of people say they want to write a book. Um, Less than 3% actually write it, and less than 1% publish it. Um, it really comes down to confidence and discipline. And it's not a lot different than if you're writing a blog or you're doing a video script, whatever, however you're putting your story out into the world. Confidence and discipline. My story is good enough to be told, and
I love that.
it is out there for somebody. Your story's not for everybody, um, and that's okay. And then just the discipline to write it and go through the process of revisions. That first draft is just getting it out of your head and onto paper. Um, I tell people a lot of times it's like throwing all the puzzle pieces on the table. That's the first draft. The revision is putting the pieces together so it starts to make a picture. Um, and just being patient with that. Um, it's not a quick process.
Yeah, and um, I guess the question that I have in my mind is, so in that process, if someone reaches out to Tracy, where should they be in that process before they get some assistance from you? Is that from the get-go, or should they have something down already?
I would just, some people want a full manuscript. Whenever I say book coach, editor, I want to talk to somebody who wants to tell a story. I want I want to help in that creative process. Um, I really look at it as it's my job to hold space. That the story is big and unwieldy. It's like somebody carrying 3 bags of groceries trying to come into their house, and they need somebody just to hold it for a minute so they can figure it out. That works for me. Um, if they have an idea for a story, I think I might want to write a story. I love those discovery calls. If they have a draft that they think is horrible, or it's the story that their kid loves, but they don't know if it's any good, the truth is, it's probably good. It may need some revision. Um, Wherever they are in the storytelling process, I want to talk to them. I want to hear the story.
And do you have uh maybe favorite, I don't know, favorite question or questions, maybe like two, three, that you love asking these aspiring authors to get a story out of them?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a great question. Um, why is this your story? Um, it can be a good story and not be yours to tell. Um, if it is your story, who are you telling it to? Who's your reader? So I have, whether it's a children's book or a memoir, keeping an audience in mind of this is who this is going to matter for is really important. And I want to know what kind of reader they are, what lights them up. So, what kind of reader are you? When you pick up something to read, what are you going to read?
A personal self, like a self-help book. Because
Okay.
I'll be honest, I hated reading, Tracy. It's I don't feel shame saying it, but you know what I grew up hearing, from my parents, reading isn't my thing. That's what they would say about themselves. And so as a kid, you hear those things, you look up to your parents, so you kind of adopt what you hear. So then I started saying reading is not really my thing. And then of course I had reading assignments, and I would read different books from, what do you call it, like romance, sorry, I don't know it in Dutch, but like they're just history books and
Mhm.
sci-fi nonfiction books. And I never really enjoyed it. And it wasn't until I think I came up to the Netherlands to further my education, and I got into this personal development space where the first book that really sparked my reading journey was Who Moved My Cheese. My uncle gave me
That's a
that
good one.
my uncle gave me that book, and it just, from there on, it just clicked, and I just read books from there on out. But anyway, I digress. We went a little sidetrack. You asked me what type of reader I
Yeah.
am, what kind of books, self-help books.
So, so what about when you were a kid? What is the one book that you're like, oh, that wasn't so bad. I like that story.
Mm, that's a good question. Um, None really comes to mind.
Okay. So, like, really later in life. Okay, if you're reading to your kids, what's a book that you think I could read this book and not want to claw my eyes out?
Oh, okay. Oh, there was this book called, what was it? Please, baby, please. So it's basically this little kid, just yeah, wanting to do different things,
Mhm.
and the parent would continuously say, like, please, baby, please, like, eat your peas, or don't play in the sand and stuff like that. Like, I just love that book.
So, whenever okay, you love that book because you read it with your kids, and they probably giggle when you're reading it, right?
Yeah.
You're like, oh, well, that's kind of funny. So, whenever I'm talking to somebody, what is it about the language in there that appeals to you? Like, it has a sense of humor. There's self-help books. I like that. And my background as a librarian helps with that, because I forever have the kid who struggles with reading. Their grades aren't great in reading. Um, they just don't like it. Some kids just, like, the act of paying attention that long is harder. Um, but being able to say, if you like this, you might enjoy this part. It's similar with an author to say, here are some pieces that you already have, things that you already know about storytelling. Um, so yeah, I can, like, if you took Please Baby Please and did a parody of it and did it for content creators, what would that sound like? Um, just give you a place to go play with it. Say, take Please Baby Please and put it together with content creators. What happens?
Yeah.
What would come?
Please, creator, please just post that content.
Just do it. Just
Just
do
do
it.
it.
Just do it. So yeah, I think sometimes we forget that it's supposed to be fun.
Fun. Yeah.
So in children's literature, it's supposed to be fun. There are things that really move you. There is a book, Angel Girl, and I forget who the author is. Um, but I read that picture book to fifth and sixth graders before they did a World War II unit, so that my kids who don't have a lot of background knowledge about history, they could see the pictures and they could make some connections as they were reading the novel later. Um, but that story is about a boy who was at a concentration camp, and little girl gave him apples through the fence, and he meets this girl later, and I won't spoil that. You should really go look at it. It's really good. Um, the book was entertaining. I had fifth and sixth graders check that book out from the moment I read it until the last day of school, begging for this 32-page picture book. And you let them read it. If self-help is your thing, read it. And let it inform the way that you write your content, right? You're learning from that all the time. If a fifth grader wants to hold on to that picture book because it's meaningful for them, because they're making meaning out of those illustrations, give it to them. Um, and encourage them to tell their story that way. There's something in that that connects for them emotionally. That's what books are supposed to do. That's what content is supposed to do. Storytelling matters. The way that we receive it and the way that we send it out into the world matters.
I, hearing this, I was listening to a podcast from Naval Ravikant, and he said, reading is something that everyone should pick up. Um, and he made a statement saying, if you don't like reading, you should start, or before you read difficult books, it's like start with a book or a genre of books that you find interesting until you really pick up that habit of wanting to read, and then you start like diversifying in different areas. I guess that comes down to what you're saying, right?
And the content that we share matters. Quality matters. But it doesn't matter how high the quality is if you don't want to pick it up and read it. Right? If it's not interesting to you, it can be high literary stuff. If historical romance is not your thing, then it's not your thing.
Yeah.
Fortunately, there's other stuff out there. Um, what I don't enjoy doing is trying to convince somebody that they need to write their story whenever they say, well, romance is where romance novels are where the money is, or self help books are
Mm.
where the money is. That's not a good reason to tell a story. It's not a good reason to tell a story. Um, it has to matter to you on some level. It has to connect with you, or you won't tell it well.
And you probably won't even finish the process, right? Because
That's right.
just like you said, discipline and what was it? Discipline and consistency?
Confident.
Confidence.
Confidence.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
discipline and confidence. And I guess a part of that is also, consistency, because if you're not, when you really get into the grueling moments of you not wanting to write, then you have to have, like the cliche saying, you have to have something bigger than that's where the money is, for you to dig deep and start, typing out words or writing out words.
So when somebody is writing a memoir, and memoirs can be um, really funny, um, and they can be incredibly painful, a part of a healing process. And sometimes people will get stuck. They want to tell their story, and one of two things happens. They're not, if it's painful, they might not be emotionally ready to tell it. And it is okay, it is more than okay to write things down and put them away for just you forever. And it is okay to write things down and put it away for a while until your heart can handle it. Sometimes, though, you just need a little direction. Um, maybe you're writing it for future you or past you, or some of the most successful memoir authors I've worked with have said, I want other people to know you can survive this. You can do the hard thing. And they might have to work through a structure part about remembering a memoir is not an autobiography. You can take out all of this part, just keep the stuff that relates to the story you want to tell. There are so many pieces of it. Being consistent doesn't mean you have to slog at it every day until it's finished. Being consistent means I know this is there and I'm going to give it some time. And sometimes you have to give it time to grow and bloom, to put its roots down somewhere. That's okay too.
I love that. I love that. What inspires your writing, Tracy? When you write online, what inspires your writing?
Connecting with people. I I wish that all of these stories, whenever I'm having conversations, being able to hold those stories is so much fun. It's so much fun. I used to come home from work, especially working with little ones, and my family would say, "Okay, well, what happened today?" And some of them were hilarious, and some of them were sad. Um, Kids never failed to disappoint, um, right? Um, and they never fail to entertain. They're going to embarrass you in front of people. They are going to give you stories upon stories upon stories to tell. Um, I like the connections. I like laughing with people, and I like encouraging people. Um, and I like seeing how much I've grown.
Hmm.
There's a time I wouldn't have put my work out there. I wouldn't have put my work out there for other people to read. Or I would get embarrassed about something that I said and delete the whole account for embarrassment's sake.
Yeah.
Um, and now I'm like, yeah, I misspoke there. I That's not what I really meant. Like, I think 5 sentences back, I said kids never fail to disappoint. That's not what I meant.
Yeah.
Uh, Kids never fail to entertain us. Kids never. Now I'm lost for words, but
Nah, that's fine. That's fine. I mean,
it,
I loved. I mean, like I'm so on the same page with you where you said, what inspires you are like the connections. I guess the connections that we make, and that brings you back to our first conversation together, which was the beginning of me. And like at the end of our conversation, I pitched you this idea of being on the podcast, and I told you to consider it, and that's what you did. You were hesitant, and which was super understandable. But what was funny was 4 days later, right? You went from super hesitant, and then 4 days later, you sent me a DM. You said, "Hey, Andy, I've been thinking about your podcast, and I'd love to be a guest." Like, take me back to that moment. What was going on in your head? What like take me back.
so I've 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 done some work. I've done some work with Daniel, who you had on the podcast earlier. I've done a lot of work on my own, and part of it is just being okay with taking risks. Um, as a teacher, I would tell my kids all the time, just try it. Um, and in a lot of ways, if my preschoolers or kindergartners built a block tower and it fell down, that's what happens. They fall. And I had this moment where I realized I had encouraged for years and years, I'd encouraged kids to take risks that I wasn't willing to take. Um, And I just decided, we're going to try some things that may be uncomfortable, that may be a little cringy and slightly embarrassing later. Um, it's all right. It's all right. Uh,
I love that I say I love a lot because generally like I just love like what like the things that you're saying because I can resonate with it on so many levels. You know, the fact that you said the word cringe in there, and I think back on this podcast, the Body of Work podcast. The reason I made this podcast, or at least I made this podcast thinking that in 10, 20, 50 years, I want to look back and see where I started. But at the same time, realizing that I'm going to look back and say to myself, like, this is so cringy, right?
right.
But it's fine. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. And I just want to know, you know, because we're coming on to the end, and I just want to know if you feel the same way, where it may feel cringy, but somehow going working through that cringe, it's like peeling off some old skin that's been like holding you back.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm at a point in my life where I am I am all the people I have ever been, and I am none of them anymore.
Ooh.
So, um, and as I grow and learn, I'm not young anymore, and that's fine. But I'm not done learning, and I am so infinitely blessed to be surrounded by people who have modeled that for me. Um, I grew up in a home that was crazy conservative. You didn't wear Women didn't wear pants, and um, no drinking and no dancing and lots of no's. Um, and my parents have changed their mind about a lot of things. Um, they have modeled the way for being older and changing your mind. That's cool. Um, I surround myself with people who are challenging me to learn new things. Like, oh, Tracy, do you want to do a podcast? Um, this is new for me and it's hard, and that's great. It can be hard and new. I hope that I get to be well into my 100s before I say, you know what, I think I'm done. I'm not learning anything else. I just want to keep going.
I doubt that'll ever be the case. I think we're always gonna find. I mean, even when we're 100, we're probably gonna be like, okay, I want to learn how to feed myself again. I don't know. I'm just.
Right. I think I'm going to pick up crocheting now. Now's the time.
No, no,
I think and the more you connect with people, that's part of learning too. Like, I want to know your story. How did you get from, um, you know, what brought you to the Netherlands to do your education? Why there and nowhere else? You know, that's part of learning too, is being curious about people, um, and finding out what connections you have.
yeah,
Um, but learning doesn't have to be. It doesn't always have to be high level.
true. Yeah, I totally agree. And the last question before the last question, you know, we can keep going, right? Is do you still feel um like right now in the era that you're in, that you still have like life is just getting started for you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Um, this is this is fun. Um, and there was a time when I thought I would teach forever. Like I can't imagine myself not being in a classroom or not being in a library. I really loved it and I was good at it. And this transition has been, it started off unexpected and it has, the newness of it, the novelty of it, with all the experience that I have bringing that to the table is so much fun. Um, Doing new things is fun. Hard new things are fun, right? That's
Yeah.
the way our brain works. We like to be challenged. We like for things to be novel. We want a little bit of struggle. Um, and I'm finally okay with I can enjoy it and not be the best at it.
Yeah. I'm glad that you decided to do this. And though you say you find it hard, like honestly, you're killing it right now. Like on this in this conversation, like you're killing it. So the last
Very.
question now that I want to ask you is cultivated lines. That's your social media handle. Where'd you come up with that handle? Is there some background info there?
Um, so it's you mentioned Mike Nager's book before, all about smart manufacturing, and I think that's one of those serendipitous moments because when I talk about education and I talk about reading and the books that I want kids and people to hold on to, I want them to be cultivated, not manufactured.
Hmm.
Um, I want them to be nurtured like seeds, not the cookie cutter stories that are versions of everybody else's story. Um, so lines in the book, and so that's where that came from. Not manufactured, but cultivated.
Oh,
Um,
nice, nice, nice. I like that. Now, Tracy, we're at the end of the conversation, and I've stolen a page out of Brene Brown's podcast, where I know that's your girl. We didn't get to touch
she,
base on her.
I think that she is um, a teacher worth learning from, for sure, for sure.
We didn't get to touch base on her, but that's fine because today's conversation was all about you. And so at the end of her podcast, she does rapid fire questions, which I'm renaming. I'm stealing it. Sorry, Brene. I'm gonna say it. I'm stealing it, and I'm calling it the quick hit questions on the BOWpod, the Body of Work podcast.
Okay,
And just for those watching, I've got some questions I'm gonna, throw at Tracy, and you just answer them. Yeah, it doesn't have to be super quick, but you just answer them as quick as you can, 1 to 2 sentences. And it's about 7 questions. So let me know if you're ready.
questions. Okay, let's go. Let's do
Uh,
it.
okay, let's go. What's one book you believe everyone should read to better themselves?
The Calvin and Hobbes Treasury.
Okay.
I don't care what age you are, wherever you are, it's good. If you need a laugh, it's there, and if you need to learn something, that's there too.
Nice. If you could instantly master any skill, what would it be?
Oh, um, instant polyglot. I would know languages upon languages.
Ooh, that's an interesting one.
Yeah.
That's an interesting one. What's the most unexpected lesson this journey has taught you?
Having fun is enough reason to get started.
Wow. If you could send a message to Tracy 10 years ago, what would you say?
Oh, it's going to be better than you dreamed. All of it.
Nice. What's one hobby you've always wanted to pick up, but just haven't gotten around to yet?
Oh, I wish I could sew.
Oh yeah.
So I, yeah, I not even a button. I'm terrible at it.
Okay. What's the strangest job you've ever had, and what did it teach you?
Um, so in high school, I worked at Busch Gardens in the children's section. Um, I did the carousel and the children's rides. Um, that taught me some really great people watching skills and introduced the hobby of people watching in a whole new way. And I think about that job a lot, actually, about how willing people are to suspend disbelief. They want to be entertained and they will believe anything.
Okay. Okay. And the last question, looking ahead 50 years, what do you hope people say about your body of work?
I hope I hope that they know that I made room on my shelf for everybody's story
Hmm.
and that joy and grace are something that I came back to over and over again.
Wow. Tracy, I want to thank you again for trusting me to take you on this journey on the Body of Work podcast. I truly appreciate you being here, making the time available to spend with me. I just want to know, how was this for you?
I had so much fun. I had so much fun. Um, you make it easy. You are such a gracious host. And, um, not scary. Not scary at all.
Uh, that means a lot to me. That means a lot to me, and I'm gonna take that. I'm gonna ensure I internalize it and just realize it, recognize it as a strength. Moving forward with future conversations.
Oh, I'm a fan. I'm a fan of yours, and I'm just excited to see what you do with this. It's going to be great.
Thanks, thanks. Now to you, the listener, if you want to get in touch with Tracy Ledford, you can find her on Instagram and Threads. Her username is cultivated_lines. I will be leaving those in the show notes so you can connect with her. I want to thank you for listening and see you on the next episode. Bye.
Bye.